Same. For so many people, it seems like the ultimate goal, right? But what if I told you that underneath all that glitz and glamour, there's a hidden cost, a psychological one? Let's really dig into what it does to a person to live their life in the public eye.
I mean, have you ever really thought about it? You see these celebrities, and they just look so confident, so powerful. But then you hear these stories. So many of them are struggling, and they're doing it silently. It's this strange paradox, isn't it? They seem to have everything, but what's really going on inside their heads?
And from the outside looking in, it's pretty easy to see why we think that. Money, nonstop attention, millions of fans hanging on your every word. I mean, that's the dream, right? That's what our culture holds up as the absolute peak of success. But here's the thing, and this is so important to grasp. Psychologically, it's not just a lifestyle change. It can completely, rewire your mind. It fundamentally changes your brain chemistry, who you are at your core. And once that switch is flipped, there's often no going back. Okay, so let's get into the first major psychological break that happens. We'll call it the fading of identity. The second someone hits that level of fame, the person they used to be, it just starts to disappear. It gets replaced by a public brand. Just think about it for a second. Every single thing you do is under a microscope. Every word you say is judged. Your internal compass, that little voice that tells you who you are, it starts to get warped. The question is no longer, who am I? It becomes, what do people want me to be? That whole journey of self-discovery just gets replaced by a constant performance. And there's actually a clinical term for this. It's called identity diffusion. It's a psychological state where you literally lose your connection with your true self, with your own values. The public persona, the character you play for the world, it gets so loud that the real you just gets completely lost in all that noise. So when you lose that sense of self, it creates this void, right? An emptiness. And something always rushes in to fill a vacuum. In this case, it's something incredibly powerful and incredibly dangerous. We're talking about an addiction to validation. Now, check out this dopamine feedback loop. This is the actual science behind the addiction. That rush you get from public praise, millions of likes, fans screaming your name, that's not just your ego talking. That is a literal chemical hit. Your brain's reward system gets flooded with dopamine. And just like with any drug, your brain starts building a tolerance. The baseline gets raised so high that pretty soon, normal, everyday life, it just feels empty. It feels boring. And the end result of this cycle it's devastating. Their entire sense of self-worth gets tied to being in the spotlight. So without that constant attention, they feel invisible. When the cameras turn off, that silence can feel like failure, like they don't even exist. Okay, so this addiction to validation brings us to our next point: perfection, pressure, and the paranoia that comes with it. It creates this unbearable weight to be perfect all the time. And that immense pressure, it completely erodes your ability to trust anyone. You basically end up living two separate lives. On one side, you've got the public persona, perfect, polished, powerful. That's the brand. But on the other side, the private reality, well, that's a whole different story. It's anxious, it's exhausted, and it is incredibly isolated because deep down that what people love isn't really you. It's an illusion, and trying to maintain that illusion is absolutely draining. And this constant doubt, it creates these really serious trust issues. You start questioning everyone's motives. Does this person actually like me? Or do they just want something from me? Are they here for the person? Or are they just here for the fame? It's a kind of paranoia that can poison every single relationship you have. And this really gets to the heart of the whole paradox. Even when they're surrounded by people, by crowds of adoring fans and so-called friends, they can feel completely and utterly alone. Because finding a genuine connection, someone with no agenda, it becomes almost impossible. So you've got this crumbling identity, this powerful addiction, this creeping paranoia. And then, on top of all of that, there's this constant nagging knowledge that fame is fragile. It can vanish in an instant. And that creates this deep, persistent fear of being forgotten. And you have to really understand this part. In their mind, being forgotten is literally worse than being hated.
For a brain that's been rewired to need that constant attention, becoming irrelevant feels like a kind of psychological death. It's a terror that can drive people to do almost anything to stay in the spotlight, even if it's through controversy, just to avoid fading away.
So let's pull all these threads together. You've got the identity loss, the addiction, the pressure, the paranoia, and the fear. When you see it all laid out like this, you realize this isn't just a tough job, it's a psychological trap. And it's a perfectly designed one. And it's a truly vicious cycle, one that just feeds on itself. The addiction to validation makes the identity confusion worse. That confusion makes you feel more emotionally isolated. And that isolation gets cranked up to 11 by the constant fear of it all disappearing. Each part just strengthens the others, over and over and over again. And this is really the main takeaway here. Fame isn't just a lifestyle. It's a condition that literally changes the brain itself. The struggles we see, the public meltdowns, the erratic behavior, it's not a character flaw. It's often a predictable symptom of a mind being fundamentally altered from the inside out. So the next time you see a celebrity living what looks like a perfect life, that polished photo, or that confident interview, just remember what might be behind it. You're seeing the highlight reel, not the reality. And behind that image is probably a human being just fighting to stay grounded in a world that's actively trying to disconnect them from who they really are. Because look, the more you understand human behavior, the more you understand these kinds of extreme pressures, the more powerful you become. This isn't really about feeling sorry for celebrities. It's about seeing the hidden mechanics of the human mind. And having that kind of understanding, well, that's a kind of power all on its own.